Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And today's video is a conversation between me and Katerina Weis. Now, I discovered Katerina via the YouTube algorithm, which recommended to me one of her videos about her binge eating recovery. Watched the video, loved it, thought she's got a great message and a really good way of articulating herself, so I invited her onto my channel to have a conversation for you guys. Now, there are some trigger warnings in this video. We do talk about weight gain and weight loss, and there are numbers that are shared about that. There is mention of BMI. There's also some talk about fasting, because Katerina tried to use fasting as a way to manage her binge eating, and spoiler alert, it didn't work. Katerina is now a coach, helping women to heal their relationships with food and break free from binge eating. And I will link to her YouTube videos, her channel, and her Instagram below this one. So if you want to get in touch with her or check out her content, then feel free to do that. I hope you enjoy this conversation. All right. Hi, Katerina. Thank you so much for agreeing to join me today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited.
You are more than welcome. Do you feel comfortable maybe kicking off and sort of telling people a little bit about you and your story and your journey with binge eating and binge eating recovery? First of all, I just want to say, the reason I found you was I found your all-in recovery video. So there's this message I think you've got going on, if I understand correctly, about recovery really takes that all-in mindset to get to where you want to. And I think that's a bit that would be really interesting for us to unpick today for people. But yeah, please go ahead and tell us your story.
Okay, so it's always hard to tell when my story really started, because I think the first time when I really thought about my weight at all was when I was quite little, because my parents split up and my father was very authoritative. And I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously because I was just a child. So I used to stand on the scale several times a day to see whether I gained weight, because gaining weight, I associated it with being bigger, being stronger, being heard. At some point, I started seeing myself as a little bit bigger as the others. And it was okay until I was around 11 or 12, when I had my first cool girlfriends, and I would compare myself to them because they were different. They were skinny and beautiful, and they had like a whole different, perception of beauty, or they just looked different because they were already taking care of themselves. I mean, 11 or 12, it's a quite young age, but until then, I didn't really think about how I looked. I had short hair. When I look at my old pictures, I think, oh my God, that's so cringe. But yeah, then I started thinking about how I look and how I look in comparison to them, because when we're taking pictures, it was always me and them, and I kind of stood out in my eyes. So I decided to lose weight, and people were starting to compliment me. And it wasn't that I was skinny again. Like, in my eyes, I never really was skinny. But people started commenting and saying, wow, you lost weight, you look so amazing. And it was like, it was like positive reinforcement to continue losing weight. And but it didn't like work like the first time, because I was also in puberty, and that helped me a lot. And I started going on to different diets and try to lose weight. And I realized that it's worked for some time, but then I would just have this strong urge to eat. My binge eating really started was when I split up with my first boyfriend, I think it was. And a friend, my girlfriend of me, and we bought a lot of chocolate and ate it, and like in a huge quantity. And I never had this feeling of not being able to stop eating before. And I realized that this actually felt really good. And after that, I kind of developed this habit of secretly binging, like not with my friend anymore, because I always felt like, okay, she stopped eating, so I should stop eating too. But it wasn't private. I was most of the time I was binging on food while binge watching some series, and I was in my room and like all secret. And yes, and I always thought that it was my fault. I always thought that I was just not disciplined enough, because all the other girls achieved looking like beautiful and skinny, everyone except me. It was always one diet that I couldn't finish, because usually just the thought of being on this diet for a long period of time, even 2 weeks was such a long time for me. So I was always looking for the first mess up that I had to go into this binging cycle. And every time, even if I just I was on this diet where I think I wasn't allowed to eat carrots or something, and then I had like one small tiny carrot, and then I thought, shit, I probably messed up, so I can just go on to eat like the whole box of chocolate anyway. It's over, so why bother? I had this body dysmorphia that I always saw myself so huge. Like when I look at the pictures of how I looked then, I saw myself the way I look now after gaining, I don't know, a ton of weight because of recovery. I can't even tell you how much that is altogether. Maybe even like 100 pounds difference. And I saw myself the way that I look now. And that was the reason why I kept on dieting and kept on pushing myself. And I think where it really escalated was when I moved out to go to university, and I didn't know anyone in this new city. I felt so huge that I didn't want to meet people. I was isolating myself and constantly just binging, and I wouldn't eat all day, and until I would just, I don't know, put on a hoodie and go to the shop like this to get all the chocolate, all the food that I was craving, and binge on it. And that was like, I think that was going on for around a year. And then I realized that there's something not right. And I came upon like this whole term and this whole idea of binge eating. And I read my first book on binge eating at that time. And that was probably, probably 6 years ago. And I thought, I don't want to gain weight in recovery. So I don't want to recover. It's okay. It's not that bad. And had I done that at that time, that would probably have been so much less, so much easier than going through another 5 years of, binge, like dieting and binging. I think what was also then a huge trigger was when I decided to go on a 40-day water fast. And that alone, it was okay. Like I felt I could complete it. But then I just really couldn't stop eating. It was insane. I think I was allowed to eat just things that were very easily digestible afterwards, but I couldn't stop eating. And I was eating like such a huge amount of food, but I couldn't stop. And this continued for days and weeks and months afterwards. So through this whole cycle, it's never really got better. I never really lost the weight, but I gained even more afterwards, every single time. Until then, I decided in the summer of 2019, I actually saw the video of Stephanie Buttermore of going all in, and I thought, that just can't be it. Why? That's nothing new for me. Why didn't I do that before? And I thought, okay, I might as well give it a try, because nothing else worked until that point. Nothing gave me the results of losing weight and finally getting skinny, or whatever my ideal was at that point. So I just gave it a try, and
Mm-hmm. I think that point that you mentioned about if recovery means going all in and recovery means gaining weight, then I don't want it. And I think so many people get stuck at exactly that point, because, and I'd forgotten how weight centered I was And I found old journals, and when I read it through, I thought, gosh, for years and years, like the problem was my weight. Yeah, okay, I wasn't happy about my eating, and I knew the way I was eating was not healthy and not doing me any good, but the problem was my weight. So the thought of giving up that desire to lose weight, as it was for me then, was just like, but that's like, it just didn't make sense to me. So it's a really brave thing to do. And how did you reach that point where you were actually willing to do that?
Well, I did notice that during this fasting, after this 40-day fast, because I gained it all back, I was constantly trying to get back into fasting. I even did try dry fasting, which is extreme, and it never really worked. And I was convinced that I had to fast to lose weight. And then I realized that I was just so weak, I couldn't really do anything, because first of all, my mind was always centered on food and on my weight and how people would perceive me. I was always like this, and trying to hide myself in baggy clothes and everything. And I just during this fasting period, when we had lectures in the university, I had to grab my boyfriend at that time, like my husband now, because I was afraid that I would faint because I was so weak. And I completely forgot that whole feeling that I had at that time. But I just knew there was something wrong. And this whole focus on food and on how I looked and how other people were looking, and it was taking up so much mental space that I was not able to function normally. I was working 3 times a week as a working student, and I had to relax the other 4 days because I was so tired. And I thought that just can't be it. I tried everything, and I don't know, maybe I should just give this one a try, because nothing worked. I mean, I don't know. What else can I do then besides like not eating at all? There's nothing that is, I don't know, more restrictive than that.
Mm-hmm. So then once you made the decision, what happened next? What did you do, and what was the outcome?
I made the decision when I was on vacation and with my mother in France, and I just decided I would eat whatever I wanted and how much I wanted. If I had like a huge meal and like 3 courses and I wanted another whatever brownie or something, I would just allow myself to have it and not to judge myself. Like this judging part was the hardest, I think, because having studied health science and being so focused on this whole area of health and of nutrition, it was hard for me. It was even hard to go to the supermarket and buy things that I saw as unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And I just constantly tried to do that. And I tried to give myself, the permission to listen to my body and eat as much as I want to. Even if, like, I was there with my mother, as I said, and she was a few times asking, well, do you really want to eat that? Aren't you full? And I said, no, I'm not full. I want to eat more, because I didn't have like this normal hunger. I had this extreme hunger and this extreme desire to eat because I've been restricting for such a long time.
Mm-hmm. So this judgment and guilt, though, becomes automatic, right? It just comes up before you even realize, even when you're trying to not judge yourself and not feel guilty. How did you manage that? Like, how did you respond to yourself? What was it you were trying to hold in mind to try and counteract that judgment and guilt that most people are going to experience because they just have for years?
I tried to first realize that I was judging myself. I tried to be very, very aware of that. And then I would think that I didn't binge because I'm lazy, or because I'm all these words that are kind of associated with it, all these negative words. I was binging because I was giving myself the place and to recover, to heal. I was just listening to my body because my body was healing, it was recovering. I tried to remind myself of that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Did you put any parameters in around it, or did you literally say to yourself, whatever I want, whenever I want, I'm all in?
wherever. I would really go all in and just eat whatever I wanted. So I had all these rules that I had set on myself, set for myself, that I was like step by step breaking. So in the beginning, I wasn't very aware of like the ton of rules that I had for myself. So whenever I thought, okay, I can't eat fruit as a dessert because that's bad for my digestion, I read somewhere, so I only can eat fruit on the empty stomach, I would think, whatever, I want food, I can eat the fruit whenever I want to. So I was really trying to be aware of my thoughts and where they took me and where they said, okay, no, don't do that because that's not good for you. And then I would do it. And if I then notice that, okay, well, my digestion seems to be not happy with the fruit as a dessert, then I would not go back to the rule, but I would consciously say that I know I don't feel that good doing it. And sometimes that didn't work like on the first time, and I would do this thing 10, 20 times, but I would eventually come back to the point where I would say, okay, maybe I should listen to my body more than to my rules that I had beforehand.
So was there a turning point where it started to change? Because I think you certainly described in the beginning that insatiable hunger. So it feels like, I think for a lot of people, it feels like they're binging all the time. Did that change, or was there a turning point?
There was a turning point, but it wasn't extreme. Like in the beginning, I was kind of waiting for that point where I would just like switch to not being hungry at all, or not like, it wasn't like that. It was like it was in steps. I think it was after, I think, a few months, I just noticed I wasn't that hungry. I couldn't eat that huge portion of food that I ate in the beginning. For example, if I had 2 pizzas in the beginning because I was so hungry, maybe I couldn't eat the second one, or then 1 pizza was completely enough for me.
So do you think for you then that your binge eating was purely restriction driven as opposed to anything else deeper that had to be worked on or changed?
It's hard to say because I'm also constantly working on my self-development, and there were a few things. So I had been working on myself for a few years at that time already, and I was always looking back and searching for maybe something that I don't know, some trauma or something, but I didn't ever, like, I never found anything that could really, be the thing. I always thought, okay, maybe if I go back in my memory and find a point where I decided that the fat I wear would keep me safe or something, and I work on this point, then maybe like my whole urge to binge would disappear. But I never really found some trigger or something like that. So I think it was mostly because I have been so restrictive for years, and this whole mindset of trying to change myself because I wasn't good enough the way I was.
There was something you said in one of your videos which I absolutely loved. So I actually wrote it down because I think it's quite useful for people to think about it this way. Because the terror is of losing control, right? That terror that actually, if I give up all control, it's just going to be chaos and it's going to be one long binge. And you said that it's not losing control, but breaking free. I loved that as a reframe. I don't know if you could just talk about that and just like how you see that difference, really. Like, what was it worth it? I think is what I want to ask, and what I think people would want to know.
Yes, it was definitely worth it. And the whole process is, you don't really see the changes until you look back. And when I now look back and see how restrictive everything was, it was like I was in a cage and I was holding myself in a cage, and it was something that took up my whole day and where my whole headspace, and I was always just so focused on exercising. Well, exercise was never like, it wasn't over exercising or something. It was more like, an attempt to change my body like that. But the issue was always the binge eating. And it was always I had so many rules that I kind of felt like in a prison. And I thought that these rules would help me. Yes, control would mean that I would lose weight. But because that didn't happen, I thought, is it really control? What am I doing then? And this breaking free is when you just realize right now, I like the biggest example is probably, like I told you before, that I used to need 4 days to recover from my 3 days of work. And I've just finished my master's degree where I was working full time and writing my thesis. And that was like such a huge project. I could have never done that before because my mind was always somewhere else, like always on this food body thing, that I could have never had the capacity to do these things. And I think, like, I don't know, these are like normal things. And back then, I never felt like I couldn't really function normally. I was just very tired, no energy, because I didn't know how different life could be when I just, was able to break free from this whole obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And
so for you then, like, the biggest advantage was that you no longer had to be thinking about food all the time. You had space for other things in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. And also with it came, like, because I always thought if I would eat too much and go into recovery, I would feel bad. And yes, well, recovery wasn't easy all the time. I never had that much energy before. Like, my body feels completely different now. It's so hard to imagine that. That's like small. I realized yesterday we had a few glasses of champagne because it was our anniversary, and then we had to go out with the dog, and we were sitting in the sun all day, and it was so hard to even walk because of the state that I was in. And then it hit me, because that was how I used to feel all the time. Everything was just so exhausting. When there was some kind of I don't know, even like some event or something where I had to stand, I would always look for a chair where I could sit down, because standing was kind of hard for me. And I always thought, oh, I must seem so lazy because I have to sit down. And just these small things that just fall away. And then when you look back, you see that they were there, and how drastically life can change and has changed. Mm-hmm. Because now I love to go out for a walk, which, because we have a dog, it was hard when I was in recovery in the first months. That was really hard because my body had to get adjusted to the weights. But now I feel like I have so much energy. I can walk for hours without it like feeling like exercise. It's just such a huge difference in my body, and also like not only my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So a clearer mind and a stronger body. One of my favorite things I think about for recovery for me is, I think one of the most damaging things about struggling with something like binge eating is that you keep breaking your self-trust. So you make promise after promise to yourself about what you're going to do and what you're going to do differently. And then you feel the pain and the sting of not keeping your word. So for me, because it just felt like chipping away at my integrity or something, it was just so damaging, like at the soul level, that's why for me recovery felt worth it. But I know that you've talked in your videos about recovery for you did mean gaining weight. For some people it does, some people it doesn't, and we don't always know when we're going to go all in what that's going to look like. So how did you cope with the weight gain, which presumably is something you've been fighting against for years?
Well, I was somehow convinced that I was already doing quite fine, and that I would, because my weight wasn't like, I think if you look at the BMI, I was already slightly above the 25, I think. And I thought I didn't have to gain that much weight, because I thought I was doing quite okay. But then I gained weight, and I didn't step on the scale intentionally, because I knew that would stress me out. And I didn't like, okay, I noticed that some clothes will stop fitting and things were kind of tighter now. And when I stepped on the scale, then I gained like, how much is it? 70 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked because it didn't feel like that much to me. And I think what's played a huge role was I switched my job at that time to a place where I didn't feel judged. I don't know, in the place before that, I felt like everyone was very superficial. And in that new place, I felt like people weren't judging me. So I didn't have much, I because I worked a lot and I was working on my thesis, I didn't have much other contact. So I tried also to intentionally not meet people who I knew would make me feel bad for gaining weight. Or if I met friends that might judge me, I would try to explain this to them. So I tried to just avoid situations as much as possible that would make me feel bad about the way I look or about the weight, because in the beginning, I saw it as a temporary thing. So even though I put all my old clothes far away so that I didn't have to look at them or even try to put them on, I think also what helped me, I think, was that, yes, we had the lockdown and I was working from home a lot. So I didn't have to, like, I didn't see the changes. I didn't see exactly how much weight I gained in the mirror because I think, again, of my body dysmorphia. And I just didn't see it that much. But I thought when I would go out and I would see the reaction of other people, that would be like a feedback that I had gained that much weight. So I tried to buy clothes that fit me, things that were comfortable, so that I just didn't, that I wasn't, that things wouldn't remind me that I gained that much weight. And I tried to accept it. And I tried to let go of this ideal that I have to look a certain way. I think that was the hardest part, because sometimes I still find pictures that are triggering. For example, when I look at old pictures and I think, I saw myself completely different at that time, and I wish I could look like that now. But then I think the difference is, after being recovered, that I have the choice to say, like, or the power to say, so what? I'm not going back to like this whole disordered eating thing. It's okay that I don't look the way I used to look. Maybe I will look like that sometime, maybe not. I'm okay either way. And I don't know, this acceptance is hard, but yeah, I think working on that acceptance and trying to let go of this self-hate almost that many people have, and that I also had, and just starting to accept that maybe my legs are bigger than of most people, or what I perceive, or that I just look different, and that realizing that my body does so many great things, and it's not just some sculpture that has to look perfect all the time that I can look at, but it's like a functional organ. And I try to accept it, like, for the things that my body did for me, instead of punishing it because it didn't look the way I wanted it to look.
Mm-hmm. There was something you said in a video which had come up this week again and again in my sessions. So for context, we're recording this at the beginning of April. And here in the UK, we had our first warm day this year. And it was sort of early 20s or 70s, I think, if you're in Fahrenheit, which of course meant less clothing or less being able to cover up, which was enormously triggering for a lot of people. And you mentioned this in one of your videos. I think you called it your spring depression.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it came round, and that idea that I'm not thin now. Like when summer ends, I think a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to get myself all that whole summer ready stuff that we get bombarded with. And I just think that's really relevant for so many people right now, that fear of the weather getting warmer. And I appreciate it's probably not transformed for you. I mean, I feel it a bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you think about that now from your recovered state or being in recovery?
it was really, I was really sad for a few days usually because of that. And then I would just jump into the next diet to make me feel better before recovery. And like this year, last year was the first year when I was in recovery, and it was getting warm again. And I just tried to find things that I could wear that would make me feel good, and where I would feel confident, and not having to not trying to wear the cool clothes or something just because other people were wearing it. I was just wearing the things that were fitting me, where I felt comfortable in. And usually I think a big fear of me, I don't know, I was so focused on the dressing sizes that I always had clothes that were way too small, because I thought I will eventually fit in there, and if not, I will just work for it. So I decided to buy clothes that were fitting, and that made a huge difference, because you look completely different when things aren't just very tight everywhere and you're just trying to fit the clothes instead of the clothes fitting you. I don't know, that made a difference for me. And I think I had a switch in my mind where I realized that everyone is kind of obsessed with themselves. Everyone is more focused on how they look instead of judging how you look, whether you have cellulite or whether you have flabby arms or whatever you think whatever your insecurities are. So that people just, even if they notice, they will quickly forget about you and get back to themselves. So that helped me a lot. So I thought, if I just feel comfortable, I will also look more confident, and people won't judge me that much, because, well, I think if you look at someone who is insecure, you will more likely judge them because people can see it.
You almost draw attention to it, don't you? Like by your behavior, or people who apologize for losing weight. And I can see it, loads of people are going to be going through this now as they come out of lockdown, and quite a few people have their weights increased in lockdown. And there's something as well about, and I did a video on it, got quite a bit of response because people really resonated with it, with kind of like warning people that you've gained weight so that you don't have to deal with that shock or whatever to begin with. And it made me think of that actually when you mentioned starting a new job. I wondered whether, this might be projection for me because it was my experience, I gained quite a lot of weight very fast in my binge eating, not in my recovery. My binge eating caused rapid weight gain, and I would find it mortifying to see people that I hadn't seen for a couple of months and registering the look on their face. But meeting somebody new actually felt okay, my body wasn't how I wanted it to be, but I felt much less judged because they've got nothing to compare it to. They're just like that. They would assume that's just always been the size of my body, probably, if they even think about it.
I felt the same. And also I talked to a coworker of me, like she has, because of my recovery journey started just quickly before I started the new job, she has seen me almost through the whole journey. And I told her that how much weight I gained. And she said, I didn't notice, really. I just didn't see, because you see the people every day and they don't really notice that. But also, like you said, I was very afraid to meet people that I haven't seen in a long time, because I thought they had the comparison then. And that was also like a struggle that I had a long time. And I feel like in the beginning, I felt like I had to explain everyone why I'm gaining weight. It was like, they will see me and they will think that I got lazy or all these things. We have this like huge weight stigma that is not making it easy for people to recover. And so I tried just not to meet many people while I still felt so insecure about it. And now that I'm talking openly about it, so if anyone asks me, or I can explain, but I don't feel like I have to tell everyone why. I don't have to explain myself.
I think I still feel it a bit because I've been in London for 20 years and I've just moved back to my hometown. So I've seen people that I know 20 years ago from school. And I find there's something triggering for that in me around the idea of meeting up with someone who knew me as a thin teenager to how I am now. And it's a thought that comes into my head, and I think, Sarah, for goodness sake, that was 20 years ago. Bodies change in 20 years. Yet that thought still comes into my head. What is it that they will imagine? And I remember talking to somebody who I used to work with later on about my weight gain and my binge eating. And they thought, I don't know if they said we or I, but they thought that the reason I'd gained weight was they knew I'd broken up with somebody who I also worked with at the time. And so they thought it was like a heartbreak thing. But actually the binge eating had been going on in the relationship, and I think was contributing to us breaking up. So it was already a problem. It wasn't triggered by the breakup. And I remember the shame I felt about that everybody at work would think that because me and this person had broken up, that was the reason my weight was increasing. I can feel it like in my body now when I say that, how that felt. Why that should matter, I don't know. But this stuff is old and sticky, and it's still around sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I don't know. I feel like the same way when I haven't met any of my friends who I knew in school, but we are always planning this 10-year reunion, I think, which should happen in 2 years, I think. And I always thought that I had to look good. We were always discussing whether we would do a 5 or a 10-year. And I always thought I had to look good if I would get there. And because some people knew I was struggling back then, and I would be bigger than that. They would think that I just failed in this attempt. And this is like so stupid, because I think when we are so obsessed with this whole, weight, food, eating disorder thing, that we forget that there are so many more things going on in life besides the way we look or besides the way our bodies look.
100%. So I always ask everybody this question who I speak to. So if someone's watching this now and they are struggling with binge eating, maybe they've recently realized it's a thing and they're wanting to pursue recovery, what would you say? Like, what's the first thing you would say to them? What would be your advice?
Don't be afraid of the weight gain, because I think that's like, for many people, the huge thing that's holding them back, because many people are just, trying to lose weight, especially with binge eating.
But isn't accepting weight gain just giving up, Katerina? That's what our brains try and tell us. That's what our brains say.
Or I feel like that's also what society is telling us, kind of. But this whole focus on weight and on food, that's more like giving up on all the other things that we could have done with our time and with our capacity, like our mental capacity and our
I think it also comes to values a little bit, like what we value, because we've been taught to, and I don't want to shame anyone for valuing weight loss. Gosh, that stuff's still around in my head as well. But that's a value that's taught to us. And I think when we start looking at all the values that we don't get to live because we're pursuing the value of weight loss. So for me, I started to value how I felt over how I looked. And I wanted that to be the most important thing. And I value freedom, and I value personal integrity. And all those values I get to live out when I'm not pursuing weight loss, which for me invariably leads to binge eating, certainly at this point in my life. But
also, freedom has gained a lot more importance to me. Like before that, I wouldn't freedom was important to me, the value of freedom, but I feel like it has just become so much more important to me now, because I'm working on my freedom from my eating disorder, and it kind of spreads to other areas of my life where I feel like I have been trapped, and where I'm looking for ways to break free, to always also experience the freedom there.
It's never just about that, right? It impacts every area. And there's something in how you've spoken about it that kind of leaves it open for, like, maybe you will lose weight in the future. Maybe you'll pursue weight loss again. I mean, maybe not saying you necessarily, maybe you, but this idea that weight loss might be possible in the future. Is that right? Like, where are your thoughts on that? Because I'm not sure. I'll put my hands up and say, like, I don't know if it's possible. I just believe that when you're healing, to focus on weight loss for most people is detrimental.
Yes.
You don't believe me? Test it out. And if when you focus on weight loss, it doesn't lead to binging, crack on.
Yes.
I'm really happy for you. I'm just kidding. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I don't want to ever go back to this intention of losing weight. I think there's like this, like I read it in books and also with Stephanie Buttermore, who has lost weight naturally. I think that there's also this expectation that when you go into recovery and you gain weight, that you will kind of somehow your body will adjust and you will lose some of the weight back at least. I think that might happen. Honestly, I don't know. It's okay for me. And I think I'm actually planning on posting a video on this very soon, where I talk about how I would lose weight if I had to try it all again. And it's just, I think many people will find it not that good, because I will not say count calories, or just the opposite. I think that if you give your body the place to heal, if you focus on your stress and you meditate to decrease your stress, or whatever helps you decrease your stress, and you just focus on healing your body and giving your body just the best environment to become the healthiest version of yourself, that your body might release the weight or some of the weight naturally and without having to force it. And that, I think, that is the only way that we can really healthily lose weight, like when our bodies, or like when our brains decide that it's time to get rid of the weight because it's maybe not serving us anymore. But I feel like if I ever go back to the point of, well, maybe I just maybe I would just start replacing one meal with a shake or something, I think that will just trigger this whole cycle again. And I honestly don't want to find out. I'm happy where I am right now.
I can tell you, I tried very often and be like, oh, I'm okay, I've been recovered for a while, I think I can, just make a few tweaks here and there. And every time I tried to do like deliberate weight loss, eating goes haywire again, and it humbles me. And then I remember, and I was like, what was I thinking? And I have to let it go again. I don't. Yeah, but I mean, I like that idea that I think people are frightened of it because they think that, one, that they'll gain weight forever. Yeah. And then there's two, where there's no way that the body's going to balance and settle down. And I love what you said about your body feeling better and having more energy and feeling stronger and all of that now, because there's an assumption, isn't it, about how your body's going to feel at certain weights. But actually how our bodies feel depends on, one, how we're treating it, but also, two, our emotional state. Certain emotions are heavier emotions. We feel heavier. Guilt, it's fascinating. I'm going to go off into another subject and we need to kind of wrap up. But yeah, this idea that different emotions make our bodies feel heavier or lighter. So freedom, for me, is a light feeling.
Yes, for me too.
So, Katerina, thank you. I'm going to link to all your stuff below. And thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your experience. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. It was very nice. And also, I feel like it's always a very beautiful feeling that if you find someone who has experienced the same thing and just not feeling that alone with your whole journey, that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for putting your story out there, because that's what you and I do, actually. You talk about not feeling alone talking to me here. Yeah. My hope is, and some of the feedback I get, is people feel less alone just by hearing people talking about this stuff as well. That's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.